You want a war? You're gonna get one.
Forget the lies, the money. We're in this together and through it all. They said that nothing's forever, and they refuse to see the change in me. Why won't they wake up? Come on, come on, come on. Let's get out to the music. Play that fucking music. Live through my music, yeah.
Welcome to episode 106 of Reliving the War, and welcome to the 3rd of November 1997. WWF Survivor Series takes place later in the week, and Vince McMahon will be having quite a few meetings backstage in regards to the Bret Hart vs. Shawn Michaels main event. McMahon gets replaced on commentary tonight by Jim Cornette for the first 60 minutes. Both Raw and Nitro are in Pennsylvania tonight. Raw's in Hershey while Nitro's in Philadelphia, but Nitro's going to start us off by showing us footage from Las Vegas, Nevada. Let's get started then with this week's episode as we make our way towards the end of 1997. Before we do that though, here's another jam-up guy. Joseph met FTR prior to the second Bash and Beckley show, and he educated the boys on horseman business. Dex Harwood and Cash Wheeler have been enlightened. Thanks, Joseph. And remember, guys, send me your pics wearing Reliving the War shirts and I'll get them on the show. The commentary team on Nitro are absolutely buzzing after what happened on Tuesday night. WCW taped a contract signing between Hulk Hogan and Sting for Starrcade 1997. It aired during Assault on Devil's Island on TNT, with World Championship Wrestling pretending it was live. And we see the contract signing on Nitro also. Hogan's being a total heel bastard, saying Sting won't show up and calling the attendees idiots. But the Stinger walks in with his baseball bat. He whacks it on the desk when Hogan says Sting's afraid of him. He signs the contract, he points the bat, and then he walks away. I actually have that match contract in my possession. It's one of my most cherished pieces of wrestling memorabilia, and here it is. Please don't make copies of it because this will get my grandkids into college one day. Sting vs. Hollywood Hogan is non-official for Starrcade. Fans are really eager to see Sting perform again, and Hogan potentially getting his comeuppance was enough to make Starrcade 97 the biggest pay-per-view in WCW history. Nitro's opening match is a tag team encounter, Rey Mysterio and Steve Regal vs. Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko, and on Raw we have a Steve Austin promo. You may think this Nitro match makes no sense, but don't worry, the teams don't get along too well. The booking committee haven't lost their minds yet. Malenko counters a Rey Mysterio monkey flip with a cartwheel, and Eddie thought this was great. He applauded his tag team partner, and he seemed happy enough to let the Iceman deal with Mysterio all alone. So Dean tags in Eddie, and Guerrero has no choice but to wrestle. Regal then comes in, and Guerrero counters a double underhook suplex with an arm drag. Regal gets the upper hand, and Guerrero begs for mercy, but Regal gets caught out, and Guerrero begins focusing on the leg. Regal comes back with a flying crossbody before tagging in Rey, and Mysterio gets the better of Guerrero too. Dean has to save his partner after a pinning Hurricane Rana, and then things fall apart. Guerrero causes Dean to get sent out of the ring after launching Mysterio into him. Rey then inadvertently drop kicks Regal, and this allows Eddie to hit Mysterio with a powerbomb before going up for the frog splash. Dean tags himself in. He's not going to let Guerrero get this victory. Dean then applies the cloverleaf and Rey taps out. Eddie wasn't happy with how this went down as the on and off again rivalry between Dean and Guerrero continues on WCW television. Vince McMahon's going to interview Steve Austin as the world awaits Austin's in-ring return at Survivor Series this week. Austin says he's been pissed off sitting at home thinking about what Owen Hart did to him at SummerSlam. Paybacks are hell though, and payback is what Austin seeks at Survivor Series. Vince McMahon reveals that Owen Hart and Bret Hart are at home watching in Canada at the moment, while telling Austin that Stone Cold ticked off the whole Hart Foundation, along with the Nation of Domination and even Ahmed Johnson. Remember, Steve Austin scored in Ahmed's end zone last week. Austin says he may have ticked everyone off, but everyone's pissed Stone Cold off. He then explains he helped Owen last week so he could get back what's rightfully his by beating Owen at Survivor Series. The Nation and Ahmed Johnson were simply in the wrong places at the wrong times. And then Big Ahmed makes his way down to the ring. Sean's fanny pack has been located, ladies and gentlemen. Ahmed says he respected Austin up until last week, but then Stone Cold crossed his end zone and fuck's it. And that respect went out the window. Ahmed says he's going to kick Stone Cold's ass ass, and Austin puts his hand to his head as if to say, yeah, I fucking bet you don't, big man. Ahmed says he doesn't need fans. Since he was 13 years old, he's been on his own. Jeez, we don't need your life story, Ahmed. And he challenges Austin to get his gear and wrestle him tonight on Raw's War. Austin asks the fans if they want to see Stone Cold beat the hell out of Ahmed Johnson, and the crowd give him a hell yeah. And Austin says he'll do it. If Ahmed wants his ass whipped on live TV, then so be it. It looks like we have a Steve Austin versus Ahmed Johnson match booked for tonight, so let's see what happens. The light heavyweight title tournament begins on Raw with Aguila versus Super Loco. On Nitro, Fit Finlay takes on Dave Taylor, and Eric Bischoff calls into the show. Looks like Finlay pressed the start button to get his alternate attire tonight. The crowd popped in the middle of the match, not for what was happening in the ring, but because Raven and the boys showed up on Nitro. Remember, we're in Philadelphia tonight. Shivani calls the group Raven's Nest here, but that'll soon get changed. Meanwhile, back in the ring, Finlay doesn't fuck around with a double nerve pinch. Dave tried to come back with a crossbody, but Fit ducks out of the way, and he ends the match with a tombstone piledriver. Mongo was about to scream gimmick infringement, but then he actually took a second to think about it. Finlay wins on Monday Nitro. The commentators were about to show a replay from Halloween Havoc, but Bischoff calls into the show and he stops the replay from getting aired. He tells the commentary team to shut up while he's talking, and he says the commentators have done a great job of making it sound like Hulk Hogan has been avoiding Sting for the past 15 months or so. Eric reminds everyone that Hogan's been on Nitro challenging Sting week after week, which, by the way, was true, even if the commentators react like it never happened. Bischoff then addresses Vince McMahon's recent Hulk Hogan bashing on Raw and the Survivor Series flashback counter-programming, saying that the only reason Vince McMahon put on that Survivor Series special was to steal Hogan's thunder. Bischoff says the Survivor Series recap show was a failure, and even TNT knows it was a failure. Bischoff says if the movie done a 4.0 rating or higher, then a series would get made, so there's more to come, apparently. Bischoff announces that the entire NWO will be on Nitro next week, including Kevin Nash, and the NWO have a big surprise for everyone at World Championship Wrestling. The live audience got restless during this phone call. They chanted boring during the last few moments. Here's the brackets for the light heavyweight tournament over on Raw. Nowhere near as prestigious as the Milton Bradley Karate Fighters tournament, but it'll have to do. Some notable names here though: Aguila and Super Loco, the match we're about to see now. That's S.A. Rios and Super Crazy. We've got Takamichi Inoki and Devin Storm. Storm would of course become known as Crowbar later in WCW. Jerry Lynn is here. Eric Shelley is an absolute random name that no one's ever heard of. Flash Flanagan wrestles his one and only Raw match too when he faces Brian Christopher. They couldn't fit Brian's name into the box, so he's now known as Before Christ. Before Christ provides commentary for this match, and Aguila pulls off a nice head scissors counter in the opening moments of the bout. Super Loco replies with a spinning wheel kick, and Brian Christopher bangs on about being the only man in this tournament. He then can't help but be impressed with Aguila's moonsault arm drag. Aguila then pulls off a springboard corkscrew arm drag, and gotta say, he's extremely impressive. WCW was always the king when it came to cruiserweight wrestling, and I couldn't help but think that Aguila would have fitted in nicely with the luchadors on TNT. Super Crazy's great too, by the way. What isn't so great is this right here. I like how he puts his arms up afterwards as if to say, yo, I fucked up, do something about it. One more time with Brian Christopher providing commentary. Aguila makes up for Super Loco's mistake with a corkscrew plancha, and back in the ring, Super Loco fucks up again when he completely misses a wheel kick on his stationary opponent. He then applies a rolling bow and arrow before throwing Aguila out of the ring again. Can't believe this mad bastard's gonna try another high risk move. But thankfully, Super Loco's cartwheel moonsault connects, but Aguila isn't prepared to get shown up tonight. His moonsault from the top to the outside was awesome, and back in the ring it ends with Aguila performing a rounding moonsault. I must reiterate that Super Loco, or Super Crazy, is a great wrestler, and this maybe wasn't the best introduction to the character for WWF audiences, but it's funny how one guy was so off the mark while the other was so impressive. Marlena and Goldust have an uncomfortable discussion on Raw next while Yuji Nagata battles Psychosis on Nitro. So it's Sonny Ono's former client taking on his new client. Nagata lays in the kicks as Shivani lets us know tonight's main event: Lex Luger versus Kurt Hennig. Psychosis pulls off a springboard dropkick, and after getting Nagata on the outside, he performs a corner senton and a running leg drop from the apron. He may have broke his ass on impact, but it was definitely worth it. Nagata takes a corner dropkick and he gets set up on the top rope rope for a Hurricane Rana. Psychosis goes for the move, but Nagata's like, nah, I'm just going to stay right here. You go ahead. Nagata kicks Psychosis, he pulls the hair during a camel clutch, he pulls off a chinlock while clearly wanting to take over from Davey Boy Smith as the Reliving the War top chinlock boy, but he's got a long way to go. It ends with Psychosis making a short comeback, but Sonny Ono jumps on the apron and Psychosis gets kicked in the head. Nagata pulls off a back suplex, we see the Nagata lock, and Yuji Nagata wins another one on WCW television. Ono has some severance pay for Psychosis, 100 pesos, he hands it over after the match, and then another Raven pre-taped promo airs on Nitro. I really hope Raven isn't doing any more kiddie stuff. For fuck's sake, Raven, he's only gone and broken into a school. Mate, that's not a good look. He says he realised the depths of human evil when kids made fun of him in school, but he didn't care. Fucking could have fooled me, Raven, because you've been crying about this stuff for weeks now. He says that nothing in nature behaves so consistently as a human being in pursuit of destruction. Quote the Raven nevermore. And I'm guessing next week he'll be in Chuck E. Cheese complaining about his first job or some shit. Thanks, Raven. We then see Raven and the lads sitting in the audience, and this mom right here puts her little stinger almost on Raven's lap. She clearly hasn't been paying attention to Nitro these past few weeks. Alright, so the WWF decide to carry on with the whole Marlena, Goldust and Pillman angle, and they take it in another direction. Marlena and Goldust sit with Jim Ross, and Marlena says she's happy to be at home with the two most important people in her life, Dustin and Dakota. She says she had to tell Dakota she was away on vacation while she was actually gone with Brian Pillman, and she's pretty much trying her best to put it all behind her and move on. The same thing the WWF should have done with this angle. While Marlena says all this, Dustin looks pretty pissed off. Dustin surprises everyone by saying he can't do this anymore. Everything coming out of Terry's mouth sickens him. He says for so long he's lived for Dusty and he's lived for Terry, but for the last 7 years he's been Terry's little puppy dog. She scorns and disciplines him every time he does something wrong, and she won't let him be himself. Dustin says his wife knows nothing about him and he's sick of it, and he then wonders what Marlena was getting up to while she was gone with Brian. Terry, however, does not need to wonder what Dustin was up to. He says he didn't sit at home, he reached out and he found something that understands him and allowed him to express himself. Goldust has found somebody else who understands him. Marlena can't believe what she's hearing, but Goldust says he doesn't love Terry. He hasn't loved her for a long time, and he says he's starting his life over and he's not living for Terry or Dusty anymore. He hands back his wedding ring, he says he's had it with this shit, and he leaves. Marlena's left crying, and yeah, that's how it ends. The WWF then air a big old Bret Hart vs Shawn Michaels video that goes through their entire history since WrestleMania 12. I'm not going to go over all this because we've watched it all on Reliving the War, but there's clips from the Fab 4 interviews here that are worth highlighting. Bret in particular was pretty harsh when he says, quote, "I don't like him, I don't trust him, and I don't believe in him. He's a phony little shit." And Bret also says he got tired of seeing the dancing, the twirling around the ring, and Shawn's Mexican style of wrestling that was enough to make him sick. Fucking hell. Shawn talks about pushing people's buttons and antagonizing people, but the problem here is that these sit-down interviews were recorded when Shawn was still a babyface, so he doesn't go nowhere near as hard as what Bret did. It's a decent little video they put on here, but if you want to see the full interviews, check out that Fab 4 video. The DVD re-release is a little pricey, but you will be able to see some clips on YouTube if you want to check it out. The whole feature though, the whole thing, is hard to come by online. Up next we have that Ahmed Johnson vs Steve Austin match on Raw, while Nitro puts on a Disco Inferno vs Perry Saturn match. We also have a Ric Flair promo on WCW's show. Before we start with the TV title match, we all know Disco's theme music is more catchy than COVID, but I read loads of comments about playing Disco Inferno's theme in reverse for some weird, secret, dark hidden message. I don't know where this came from, and it could be a troll, but I bid anyway. If there's one thing the Disco Inferno needs, what he doesn't need though is the Nitro in-ring debut of Perry Saturn, and hopefully the Inferno done his homework, because Perry is not to be fucked with. Looks like Disco came prepared and he takes out Saturn right away with a back elbow, but Saturn replies with a dropping suplex that looked great. Saturn then drops Disco's hand and arm with a belly to belly, and then he tries to separate Disco's fingers while the TV champ screams in agony. Saturn moves on to an armbar while Raven looks on. Disco gets to the ropes, and then Saturn brings Disco back to the mat with a leg sweep, and he follows up with a top wrist lock. The TV champ's in trouble here. The commentators talk about Raven favouring Saturn and Raven treating the other members of his group like dirt when compared to Saturn as the match continues on. Perry performs a drop toe hold and he goes for the rings of Saturn, but Disco rolls over and he forces a rope break. Saturn makes Disco pay with a clothesline followed by a suplex. It's shocking how WCW are totally jobbing out their TV champion as Saturn applies another armbar and he drills his knee into Disco's bicep. Disco gets kicked, he suffers through another armbar and another belly to belly suplex, and Disco finally fights back with a jumping clothesline. That's going to be the last thing Disco does in this matchup because Saturn delivers 2 more suplexes. He then signals for the rings of Saturn and Disco gives up to Saturn's finishing hold. Perry Saturn becomes the TV champion in his Nitro debut match. It was a great showing for Saturn and we got to see what he was all about in this matchup, and that's what a debut match should be, but it was at the cost of Disco's mini push, which, to be fair, ended at Halloween Havoc. Stevie Richards isn't allowed to celebrate. Raven throws him out of the ring. The rest of Raven's group stay inside the ropes as Saturn holds his new title belt in the air, and then we go straight to Mean Gene Okerlund afterwards for a Ric Flair interview. Flair's on the lookout again for Kurt Hennig, and once again he promises to get Kurt by the end of the night. He invites the NWO to come out and try to cut the sleeves off his robe while he's on his feet and looking them right in the eye. And then Mean Gene lets Rick know that World War III is our next pay-per-view and Slick Rick's got another shot at the US title at that show. Plus, he's going to compete in the 3-ring Battle Royal. Flair says he'll become the 14-time world champion, and that starts with throwing Kurt Hennig over the top rope in the World War III Battle Royal, just like everyone else. Ahmed Johnson versus Steve Austin does not happen on Raw. I feel like I'm bait and switching you guys now with this stuff happening so frequently, but don't shoot the messenger. Ahmed got in the ring and he was ready for war, but then Kane and Paul Bearer showed up. The path of destruction continued with a chokeslam and 2 tombstone piledrivers. Kane 100% scored in Ahmed's end zone tonight, but Mick Foley runs down for the save. Paul Bearer takes the mandible claw, Kane gets whacked over the head with a metal bar of some description, and Mankind rushes out of the ring to defend Ahmed when Kane eventually sits back up. The Undertaker's little brother has been floored for the first time, but he didn't stay down for too long. It shows us though that he's definitely not invincible. When we come back from commercial break, Steve Austin comes to the ring and he said Ahmed would get his ass whipped, and that's exactly what happened. Though Ahmed got off lightly because Austin would have opened up a real can of whoop ass if their fight actually happened. Stone Cold's still looking for a scrap though, and he challenges anyone in the locker room to step into the ring right now and face the Rattlesnake. Bad move, Stone Cold, because here comes the Nation of Domination with Rocky Maivia looking particularly eager to fight Austin. The whole faction walks down to the ring. Kama gets inside the ropes. If only there were a few guys who could save Austin's life in a professional manner. There they are, right on cue. Hawk and Animal deal with the boys on the outside. Austin stuns Kama, and Stone Cold walks back up the ramp laughing his ass off as the fight rages on outside the ring. We then go to the Warzone portion of the show, and Jim Cornette has left the commentary table. McMahon and Lawler have taken over commentary duties alongside Jim Ross. This was maybe going to be the original plan, having 2 different announce teams for Raw, just like Nitro's second half, but this would be the final time McMahon commentates in any kind of full-time capacity due to what happens at Survivor Series. D-Generation X gets some promo time on Raw. On Nitro, Scott Hall takes on Chris Jericho, and we have a Luchador Battle Royal. Scott Hall has a tag team belt for some reason, and Sabisco wants to know where the bad guy bought it from because he certainly didn't earn it. Scott conducts his survey, and as always, it's one more for the good guys. Hall actually says it's one more for the bad guys before he quickly catches on and he says, "Hey, you can't say that." Scott then talks to Larry Sabisco. He tells him he's a decent announcer, but on his best day, as a wrestler, he could never touch the Wolfpack. Scott again says Sabisco couldn't even beat Eric Bischoff. So, Scott Hall said that he went behind Eric Bischoff's back in this match in order to give Chris Jericho a victory, and afterwards, Bischoff was fucking livid. Scott was supposed to win, but he told Jericho to come up with a finish, and Jericho went along with Hall's request. This was all according to Scott, by the way, in an RF Shoot interview. When Bischoff started screaming at Hall, Scott asked him over and over if the ending was exciting for viewers, and, well, Scott had a point. When you know the story and when you know what Hall and Jericho had planned beforehand, it makes this little moment right here a bit more special.
Hey, Jericho, come on down.
Hall throws his toothpick at Jericho, and why does no one ever see this coming? Hall feels Jericho got lucky after an arm drag, Scott grabs the wrist and he won't let go until he slaps Jericho around a bit, and Chris replies with a hard kick to the chest and a follow-up jumping spin kick. Scott punches Chris in the mouth and we see the fall-away slam. It looks like it's already all over. He signals for the outsider's edge, he looks at the camera and he says, "Hey Sabisco, this one's for you." Chris then kicks the top turnbuckle pad, he performs a roll-up and Jericho wins via pinfall. Now, Jericho does pay a price here, he still takes the outsider's edge, twice, but fuck did that crowd pop when Jericho defeated Scott in the middle of the ring. Larry Sabisco comes down to save Chris and he presents Scott with that match contract from last week. Scott won't sign it, he walks away from the ring while reminding us Sabisco can't even beat Eric Bischoff, and Larry called Scott the biggest coward of the NWO. The match itself's nothing to go crazy about, but the story behind the match is brilliant. Scott Hall knew he didn't need to win matches to stay popular. A Luchador Battle Royal was booked next to give fans a taste of what they could expect at World War III, but the Giant interrupted the match and it got thrown out. Do you see what I see here though? Do you see the jammiest guy that ever jammed a jam? That's right, El Dandy competed in this Battle Royal. So the Giant wipes everyone out and he says that's how you train for a Battle Royal. World War III's just around the corner and the match favours the big man. Not big sexy Kevin Nash, there's only one big man in pro wrestling and that's the Giant. The Giant says he hopes the World War match comes down to Nash and himself because Kevin Nash will get thrown right into the crowd and the Giant will get his title shot. Shawn Michaels gives Hunter a big old kiss on the lips and he tries to silence the inevitable unsavory chants by kissing China. Michael Cole wants a kiss too, but he doesn't get so lucky. Triple H tells Cole he's been doing one hell of a job recently and he shakes Michaels' hand. And then, I'm gonna get people complaining and telling me this is bullying like I'm the one who fucking did it. And I do agree that Michael went through a tough time with Helmsley and Michaels, but boy does he fly here. This doesn't really get a reaction either though, and I think even people in the audience thought it was a bit unnecessary. Jim Ross lost his mind and got HBK fined when Shawn stuck a bandage roll down his pants. Michael Cole's in here fucking taking bumps. Shawn says he's the icon that can still go, but HBK's going to take it one level higher. From this point on,
Shawn Michaels will always be known as the wrestling...
Triple H says he knows where Shawn was going with that one while HBK plays air guitar with his European belt. Trip says to be a god, you have to be as old as God, and you better be able to walk on water if you expect anyone to watch The Age in the Cage. I love it. Shawn says he's going to show Bret that HBK is the man at Survivor Series, but he quickly moves on to more important matters, like cracking everyone up last week on Raw by showing his rusty ring on TV. If the fans thought that was bad, next week on Raw, Shawn promises to walk to the ring naked, and then he wants to show Ken Shamrock the real world's most dangerous man, as in Shawn's little man. Triple H tells Sergeant Slaughter to get out and sign the match for next week. Slaughter comes down to the ring, he begins talking, and the lads came prepared for Slaughter's slobbers. They have little shields for their faces. This isn't good enough though, they interrupt Sarge again to grab little window wipers, and I remember laughing my ass off when this happened back in '97. It's lost a bit of its humour after repeat viewings, but it's still amusing. Shawn and Hunter can't stop smiling as Slaughter continues on. Shawn isn't going to get a match against Ken Shamrock next week. Oh no, the match is going to happen tonight. Shawn Michaels versus Ken Shamrock will main event Raw this week. Jim Ross then says the second part of the Jeff Jarrett interview happens tonight on Raw also, except it doesn't. The interview doesn't get played. Raw was live this week, so we'll put it down to time constraints, but still, it's better to wipe these things completely from the format instead of having a bunch of 2-minute matches in order to squeeze everything in. I'm looking at you, WCW Nitro.
Space Mountain versus German Pork Sword. Let's fucking do it, Nature Boy.
Oh, big bratwurst.
Alex Wright versus Ric Flair on Nitro, Marc Mero versus Savio Vega on Raw. Slick Rick gets Alex to dance for him because that's what any self-respecting man would do, and the Nate likes what he sees. Das Wunderkind is too smart to get caught out with Rick's antics, and Flair looks to the crowd as if to say, this fucking guy. The two lock up, Wright chops Flair in the corner, we see a European uppercut, another chop, and Flair repays Alex with a few hard chops of his own. Alex ends up on the outside, and Deborah gets her fast pass to Space Mountain should she want to avail of such services. Alex knows Deborah wants some of that action, so he brings her back up the ramp and he wants to cancel the match. He then has second thoughts, he comes back to the ring, the two lock up again, and it's all Flair. Even Alex's sick cartwheel skills can't help him out here, though a heel kick will do the job. Alex isn't thinking straight. He tries to get into a chop war with Ric Flair, and as great as Alex is, this is something he just can't win. Flair does go down after a dropkick though, and Alex follows this up with multiple elbow drops, but he tries to cheat when covering Flair and Nick Patrick catches him out. Flair finds himself on the apron and he gets suplexed back inside the ropes. The commentators explain that the winner of World War III gets a title shot at Super Brawl next year, and they dream up opponents for Sting if Sting can beat Hogan at Starrcade as Ric Flair drops a knee in the ring. The match goes to the outside where Rick stays in control with strikes at the guardrail and a backdrop on the protective mats. A neck snap across the top rope turns the match in Alex's favour, and Flair takes the corner bump to bring the fight back to the outside, but then Alex misses a plancha. He again tries a high risk move back in the ring, but we see the destruction of the big Bratwurst and Alex is now in danger. Flair delivers a vertical suplex, he styles and profiles, we see the figure 4 and Alex gives it up. It was too much to ask. Alex is on his way to legendary Hall of Fame status, but a victory over Ric Flair wasn't on the cards tonight. Can't win them all, Alex, can't win them all. Sable wasn't ready yet for Marc Mero's matchup, but Mero drags her out of her dressing room while calling her an idiot. Mero takes on Savio Vega next on Raw, and Vince McMahon flat out says Sable is the star during the entrances. For those of you who are seeing this all for the first time, you're gonna witness how insanely popular Sable ends up becoming over the next few months. This match plays out exactly like Mero's two previous matches, so I'm not going to go into detail. It's another low blow that gets Mero an unfair advantage, and then we see the TKO once again. Michael Cole tries to interview Sable after the match, and he wants to know how Sable feels about Marc hitting low blows to get wins. And Marc interrupts the interview, telling Cole if he wants to interview a superstar, he should interview Marc Mero. Mero's going to represent Team USA at Survivor Series, but we'll talk about that a bit more in a moment. Ray Traylor vs Steve Mongo McMichael happens next on Nitro, while the British Bulldog takes on Vader in a dog collar match. Don't get your hopes up though, it's not as good as it sounds. Goldberg made an appearance during the Mongo match and he cost Steve the victory. Mongo was just making his comeback when Goldberg appeared on the rampway with the Super Bowl ring, and this distraction gave Traylor an opportunity to hit the Bossman Slam. Now would be a good time to check in on the streak, and let's see. Yeah, on WCW Saturday night, Goldberg wrestled the Renegade and he got a victory. So the official streak count is now 7-0. But wait, there's more. He also wrestled Bobby Eaton twice at house shows. One on Saturday, remember WCW Saturday Night was taped, and he wrestled him again on Sunday. That means officially Goldberg is now 9-0. I've got a feeling this streak's already completely fucked and the number's going to be different when WCW mention it again on TV, but we're going to count this the right way from start to end. Let's see what happens. Also on WCW Saturday Night, Alex Wright was about to attack Goldberg, but he thought twice about that. So this dog collar match, Davey comes to the ring with Jim Neidhart, Doug Furnas and Phil LaFawn. This is Team Canada for Survivor Series. Team USA consists of Marc Mero, Goldust, Vader and the Patriot, although the Patriot doesn't appear due to injury. Jim Ross says an announcement will be made later in the week regarding the Patriot's replacement, and just in case you didn't know, it's a surprise. So the first person to touch all four corners in succession wins the match. Vader pulls Davey around the ring a bit before bringing him to the corner, and we see the big forearms. Davey decides to throw Vader over the top rope, and he lets his Team Canada buddies do a number on his opponent, and it's all legal. Davey then brings Vader back inside the ring. He tries to touch the corners, and he gets the 3 before Vader pulls the chain and Bulldog takes a bump. Michael Cole interviews Furnas and LaFawn, and he asks why are these guys returning to WWF as part part of Team Canada. Phil LaFawn says, "I am a Canadian, you idiot, and proud of it." Doug Furnace, though, he's American, and he says when he and LaFawn had a car accident during the summer, fans all over the world sent letters, but not a single letter came from an American fan, and this was after Doug praised the American fans to his tag team partner. So the lads have turned their backs on the fans of America, and they've joined up with a few Hart Foundation members to face Team USA at Survivor Series. During this conversation, Davey took a powerbomb. Jim Neidhart tried to stop Vader from touching the final corner, but Vader wins it, and he gets jumped by Team Canada after the bell. Some random fan jumps in the ring, and it's Steve motherfucking Blackman. Steve Blackman throws some sweet kicks, but Jim the Anvil Neidhart performs an admittedly sweet spear that would have made Goldberg hand back that Super Bowl ring and rethink his entire career. They're trying to make it look as legit as possible here, with Vader pulling Blackman off of Jim, but then he covers him up to stop Team Canada doing any further damage. Officials and security hit the ring as JR says this fan got a little carried away. McMahon says the WWF encouraged fan participation, but the company doesn't encourage this kind of behaviour. Blackman's lucky our main man Marc Curtis wasn't around though, or he'd be in real trouble. Steve Blackman then is the fourth member of Team USA. You expect more from a dog collar match, but that's Davey's last match on Raw for a little while. The next time we see Davies on WCW Nitro, and his first match is against Steve Mongo McMichael. Dreams do come true. Tag team action next on both shows before our main events. Los Boricuas vs Billy Gunn and the Road Dogg. On Nitro, we've got a Steiners vs Public Enemy rematch from last week. Before the Nitro match, DDP cuts a promo with Mean Gene Okerlund, and Page says he's living the dream right now. It doesn't matter how the Hulk Hogan match went last week because Dallas is doing what he loves, and what an awesome attitude to have, by the way. Page says Halloween Havoc had the biggest pay-per-view viewing audience of all time for a wrestling show, and he's honoured to have wrestled in the semi-main spot. The next night he wrestled Hogan, and that got him all jacked up. Page says he wrestled Savage and Hogan back-to-back, and he gave it everything he had in the Hollywood Hogan bout. Dallas reminds Hogan that the Hulkster couldn't beat him, but DDP's now looking ahead to World War III. No one wants the world title more than Dallas, and if Hogan remains champ and if Dallas can win the Battle Royal, then Hulk should be very worried, seeing as Dallas knows him a lot better now after their Nitro encounter last week. As we're in Philadelphia this week, the Public Enemy get a great reaction from the audience, and they wanted to do a more hardcore style of wrestling match. Well, as hardcore as it can get in WCW really. So we have a Philadelphia street fight here, and it almost ended in disaster. It's tornado tag rules, and we get flashbacks of the Nasty Boys versus Public Enemy with loads of split screen footage. Scotty Steiner had a little slip up here. Rocco Rock landed on his head when performing a crossbody off the stage, but it was Rick Steiner and Johnny Grunge who had a bit of a problem at the end of the bout. You could maybe put this down to DiBiase also, but have a look. Rick was placed in between two stacked tables and Grunge went to the top rope. Now, Rick has no visibility, so I'm assuming he was waiting for DiBiase to give him his cue to move. Well, he moves way too late. We don't see the full impact, but the side of his head has been busted open pretty bad, and this all happens within seconds. Scott covers Grunge while looking at his brother with a concerned look on his face, and both Rick and Scott look seriously pissed off after the final bell. I wonder what it was like to be Johnny Grunge when both teams got to the back. Gunn and James still don't have an official tag team name, but the Road Dogg says he and Mr. Ass are moving up the ladder, and Los Boricuas are merely a stepping stone. Really, we have the same problem as last week where the audience have no one to cheer for and the crowd reaction's a little flat. Both teams tried to cheat throughout the bout and it was Road Dogg and Billy Gunn who were more successful, but Jesus maybe pulled off the move of the match with this powerbomb flip onto the top turnbuckle. Billy Gunn broke up the follow-up pin and he dragged Road Dogg on top of Jesus. The Boricuas lose this one and Vince McMahon called it a cheap victory for Road Dogg and Billy Gunn. You know, was it really any different from any other heel tag team victory though? Shawn Michaels vs Ken Shamrock closes out Raw's War, while Kurt Hennig vs Lex Luger is our Nitro main event. Hennig gets shoved to the corner to start the Nitro match and he takes a back elbow to the face. We see a Luger side headlock and shoulder block. Kurt comes back with a few strikes and Nitro goes to commercial break after Lex hits a clothesline. We come back and Kurt's taking his regular time out, having what looks like a civilized argument with a fan at ringside. The match resumes with Luger taking a few kicks and Randy Anderson has to stop the onslaught by pulling Kurt away. Lex then gets choked on the top rope. He takes a jumping forearm while draped over the apron, and we see the snapmare and neck snap from Kurt Hennig. The US champ's looking good here. A big knee lift puts Luger down and Lex gets choked with Hennig's boot in the corner. Kurt then cranks Luger's neck and they've lost the crowd at this point. They're chanting boring again. The crowd stay flat during Lex's comeback, and this is usually where you see people going nuts, but Philadelphia didn't care too much. Kurt avoids the torture rack by holding onto the ropes and the competitors fall out of the ring, and that's the end of our match. Kurt grabs his US title and he's gonna head back up the ramp, but Ric Flair shows up and Kurt gets annihilated. Kurt does manage to get back in the ring, but Lex is waiting to put him in the rack. Luger lifts him up, but Flair jumps in the ring and he attacks Hennig again. Flair then chases Kurt back up the ramp, but Lex Luger's gonna follow him. Nitro goes off the air with the total package confronting the Nature Boy about the interference in his main event match. Nobody really cared about Nitro's final match, unfortunately, but it looks like the Flair vs Luger rivalry is going to get restarted on WCW television. Ken Shamrock attacks Shawn before the Heartbreak Kid can remove his entrance gear. Michaels gets thrown on top of Hunter in China, and the crowd's firmly behind Kenny Boy tonight on Raw's War. Michaels and Helmsley then get their heads smashed together, and Shamrock forcefully throws HBK back into the ring before lighting him up in the corner. We see the Flair corner bump, but Michaels is able to counter the belly to belly with a thumb to the eye. Shawn briefly goes on offense, but he miscues a corner leapfrog, and Shamrock throws more punches before delivering a fisherman suplex. There's a bit of a communication problem when Michaels goes for a hip toss, but Shamrock hits a clothesline. They try the spot again and it doesn't look too good, and you can see Shawn laughing. Maybe just a bit unprofessional there, HBK. You can hear Shawn calling for a clothesline too, and both men tumble out of the ring. Shamrock rams HBK into the ring post, but Chyna gives Ken a receipt. And then we see Rick Rude coming down the ringside before we take a break. We come back and Helmsley's doing a number on Shamrock on the outside. The match resumes with a Ken Shamrock crossbody inside the ring, but Shawn replies with a clothesline. Shawn then applies a chinlock as the commentators hype up the Survivor Series main event between Bret and Shawn. And Ken then breaks free and he catches Michaels with an inside cradle, only getting a 2 count. Shawn fires back with a dropkick. He mocks Shamrock's fighting stance, but Ken manages to dodge a corner charge, and Shamrock now has a chance to beat Michaels in a Raw's War main event. It was all going so well with a few jumping heel kicks, but Michaels counters a Frankensteiner with a sit-down powerbomb before deciding to end the match. HBK goes for the super kick, Shamrock dodges it and he performs the belly to belly. Ken takes out Triple H and then he applies the ankle lock. Chyna distracts the referee while Shawn taps out, and the magical briefcase comes back into play when Rick Rude smacks Shamrock across the back. Hebner calls for the bell as Triple H starts attacking Shamrock. We see a pedigree on top of the briefcase, and Raw then fades to black. Raw's main event was way better than Nitro's. It wasn't perfect, but it was leagues ahead in terms of overall match quality. I struggled again to pick a winner this week. DX and Steve Austin were big highlights on Raw, but then again, the Scott Hall stuff on Nitro, along with Flair vs Alex Wright, was pretty good too. If I had to choose one to recommend though, I'd probably say Raw. It feels a bit more complete with a decent main event to cap off the show. Raw's in the lead now with 47 points, Nitro has 46 points, and we're still on 13 ties. In the TV ratings, Nitro wins with a 4.0, while Raw recorded a 2.6. Next up is Survivor Series 1997, and just to keep expectations in check, I won't be going into a serious amount of detail in regards to the screw job. It's a story that's been told a million times and there's nothing I can say that you guys don't already know. However, I will look at the whole match in detail, which is something that rarely happens, seeing as all focus stays on the final moments. Join me this Sunday and we'll see what happened in Montreal. On Nitro next week, Disco Inferno battles Chris Jericho. We get a Halloween Havoc rematch when Rey Mysterio faces Eddie Guerrero. And WCW present Lex Luger vs Ric Flair in the main event. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Reliving the War, and take care.